Hey, everybody. I'm calling our special joint meeting of the Commission on Sustainability and the Environment and the Clean Beaches Oceans Parcel Tax Citizens Oversight Committee to order. Welcome. It's great to see you all. This is our first joint meeting. So it's nice to meet you guys. We've got a couple more commissioners that are on their way. Oh, they're walking right in, so then we will have a quorum. But why don't we start with some announcements.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Clove Galley. I'm with Office of Sustainability and the Environment. I just want to give you a little bit of housekeeping since we're all going to be meeting together now. You have a microphone in front of you, and we are so lucky as to have this recorded, and then it will be uploaded to YouTube. It's going to be a very easy way for people to be able to listen to everything. So I do ask that you please make sure you speak into the mic when you speak, and you press it, and it should be a little blue mark, a little blue light comes on, and then your mic is on. So bathrooms are out there. We have pizza and food, and you're welcome to continue to eat throughout. And public comment for people who want to make public comment tonight is going to be right over here. Please stand and state your name and where you live, and then you can make public comment when Dean calls on it. We do ask that everyone from both bodies stay for the whole meeting, as this is our first joint meeting, and our next joint meeting will be November 16th, I believe, 2026. Okay, Dean
Great.
And Marion, take it away.
All right. Thank you. Well, whoa. What did you do? Whoa. What happened? That made a hell of a noise. First, why don't we do roll call, and I think we'll split each group up. So why don't we do roll call for the Commission on Sustainability, Environmental Justice, and the Environment. I am the chair, Dean Kubani. And we go to Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob Lempert, a commissioner.
I'm Ashley Olson, commissioner.
Susan Mearns, commissioner.
Great, and that's 4 out of our 7. And why don't we do the roll call for the Clean Beaches Committee?
I'm Marion Clark, Chair of Clean Beaches.
Oh, Mary Marlowe, Clean Beaches. Okay.
Benjamin K., Clean Beaches.
Carson Vissering, Clean Beaches.
Great, okay. So we've got quorums for both groups. Let's move right on to public input on non-agendized items. So any public input under this item will, we can't talk about it at the meeting, but it looks like we have one person. Jerry? Go right ahead. You have 3 minutes, Jerry.
Very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
It's great to be at this joint meeting of these important groups. My name is Jerry Rubin, and I am a member of the 7-member Urban Forest Commission. We were a task force for 17 years, chaired honorably 17 years ago by our wonderful former mayor, Judy Abdo, and our great former city manager, Susan McCarthy. I can't believe it's been 17 years, but we're grateful that the city's decided to deem us a standalone, full-fledged commission. And you're all invited to see what we're doing. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, September 9th at 6 p.m. at the Santa Monica Main Library upstairs in the community room. We meet every other month. And we're also having a special meeting on an important issue dealing with the coral trees on San Vicente. People have had concerns, and our landscape director, Matthew Wells, and our urban forester Madeline Roush came and participated in a very large 100-person Zoom meeting last week. And we are deciding now whether that meeting will be on October 14th. That's the likely date at 6 p.m. at the main library, focusing only on the issue of the coral trees on San Vicente. Or it might be possibly on October 8th, which is a Thursday, but it's probably October 14th, but we'll keep you abreast of that. And we invite everyone to participate. And I just want to say, in my couple of years on the Urban Forest Task Force, now Commission, I've learned a lot and seen what a dedicated staff we have. And sometimes, I guess people think it goes without saying how great our trees are, but I think it's important that we say it and we talk about it, and we talk about it more, because they're doing such hard work and limited budget. And after the fires and the winds, we were lucky to escape from the fires, but we didn't escape the winds, and it took the whole budget. And luckily, the city, not luckily, rightly, they decided to give them more money and do the stuff that they need to do. And they've lost some people and limited resources, limited budget, so we can't do everything we want to do. But I hope you'll support them, and possibly even, if not this year, maybe sometime next year, having a joint meeting with members of the Urban Forest Commission and your commission as well. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Is there any other public input on non-agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 2, which is public input on agenda items under special agenda, closed session, and consent calendar. Our special agenda item is coming up next, which is Santa Monica Pier Water Quality Task Force overview from Naomi. Seeing no public input, let's move on to the special agenda item.
There we go. Oh, sorry, guys. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all so much for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is Naomi Maurice. I'm a water quality data analyst at Heal the Bay, and I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit more about the work that Heal the Bay has been doing in collaboration with the Office of Sustainability and the Environment to try and address the pollution issues that we're seeing in the water around the Santa Monica Pier. And I can just take questions throughout, so just raise your hand. I'm happy to answer as we go. So I always like to just kind of start to set the scene and think about the beaches and the pier. Right now, as you guys are probably all familiar, beaches in Santa Monica are a huge hub for recreation and tourism in this area. We know that millions of people are visiting them each year, and that tourism does account for a large portion of the economy in this area, so really important aspects there. We also know that these are some of the most accessible beaches in the area. These beaches are right at the end of the 10 freeway, right at the end of the E line. So we know that people are coming in from inland locations and visiting these beaches. That said, we also know that there's going to be increased visitorship at these at these beaches in the next couple of years. We already kind of saw this with the World Cup watch parties, tons of people coming down here, visiting these locations. And we know that there are going to be some upcoming music festivals, 2027 Super Bowl entertainment, and then of course LA 28 is right around the corner. We know people are going to be coming here, and so we want to make sure that these beaches are kept clean and that people who are coming here are safe to get in the water. And so one thing that Heal the Bay really focuses on is beach water quality. The reason why we focus so much on this is that pollution in the water can make you sick. And so when it comes to beach water quality, there are a ton of different things that you can look at. We focus specifically on bacteria. We look at fecal indicator bacteria. These bacteria are pretty easy to test for. You can just take a sample and usually get results back within about 24 hours. And if these results come back positive, that indicates that there's fecal matter in the water. And why this is so important is that even a single instance of coming in contact with water that has high levels of bacteria in it can cause illnesses like stomach flus, ear or upper respiratory infections, skin rashes, nasty things like that. Ask anyone who you know who likes to go swimming or who's a surfer if they've gone out after a big storm or they swim near creek flows or storm drains. They might have some nasty ailments to kind of talk to you about that they've gotten from getting in the water. Go for it.
Can you provide a species of the fecal indicator bacteria?
Yes, so there are 3 different fecal indicator bacteria that we look at. The first one is Enterococcus. The second one is fecal coliforms, which is sort of analogous with E. coli. And the third one is total coliforms, which encompasses the fecal coliforms as well as some other bacteria indicators. Go for it.
Has it been like eDNA test, some kind of DNA test on the species the fecal matter came from?
We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. And so some of this information can be a little bit complex to go over. If I told you that your favorite beach just got tested and there's, say, 150 MPNs per 100 mil of Enterococcus in the water, you would probably look at me like all of you are looking at me and not really know what that means. But if I told you that a beach had an A grade or an F grade, you might feel more confident about whether or not you want to go and get in the water. And that's where the beach report card really comes into play. We take this complex water quality information and we transform it into these easy to understand A through F letter grades for over 700 beaches up and down the West Coast. We do this on both a weekly and an annual basis. And these water quality grades are based on the bacteria standards that are set forth by the state. So the state has said, hey, this amount of bacteria, anything above it is considered unsafe for swimming because the risk of getting sick is too high. And so the grades are really an overall indicator of water quality at a beach during any given time. And so, like I said, we provide these grades on both a weekly and an annual basis. And when we look back at the last 20 or so years of data, and we look at our list of the top 10 most polluted beaches in the state that we put out each year, we can see that the Santa Monica Pier is a repeat beach bummer. It has been on our list of the top 10 most polluted beaches for 15 out of the last 21 years. And when we break the water quality down and we look at some of the seasonality of things, when we look at different weather patterns, we can see that this site has poor water quality all year round during both wet and dry weather. Go for it.
Do we know what the outlier was when we're seeing an A in the summer grade, and what are the variables that we think are different contributing to that A grade in 2011 and 2012?
So we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit, yes. But infrastructure. Okay, so we'll keep going. And so a lot of people have been asking us to act on this for years. As you can see, this is a multi-decade problem. And when we start to think about what we can do about this, we really need to trace it back to sources. And so when it comes to fecal indicator bacteria, there are several different potential sources that can contribute to this. The first thing would be sewage or septic leaks. Those are obviously going to add fecal matter to the water and make it unsafe for swimming. Things like animal or human waste can also contribute to this. So you can see there are a ton of birds on this beach right here. They're definitely contributing to the fecal bacteria that's in the water. Things like runoff or creek flows are also common sources. So if you think about Southern California, we have so much hardscape. So anytime water falls from the sky, it'll hit the pavement, go into our storm drain system, and oftentimes that goes straight out to the ocean unfiltered or untreated. And then we do know there are some natural sources, things like birds, animals. Kelp can kind of harbor this bacteria on its own, but that has proven in the past with studies to really only contribute to a very small portion of the bacteria that we're seeing at these locations.
How is natural sources different than animals?
Rob, can you speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. How is natural sources different than animals in line 2?
So some people will say, oh, well, if there are birds at this location, that is considered a natural source. And so in some situations, it is considered natural. If a bird comes by, they poop in the water, there's going to be some level of that. But if you've got birds hanging around infrastructure, that wouldn't really be considered a natural source in that sense. That is in large part due to sort of human infrastructure or human changes. Yeah. Okay, so as you guys can see, there are a lot of different potential sources of bacteria, but when it comes to the pier, we do not know what our main source of bacteria is. And without knowing what that main source is, it's really hard to come up with solutions that we know will work. We can try stuff, but if it doesn't really address that main problem, it might not really be all that effective. And so that really is the reason why we've put together this task force. We want to kind of address some of these things and get to that root cause. So Heal the Bay is leading the Santa Monica Pier Water Quality Task Force in collaboration with the Office of Sustainability and the Environment, as well as Public Works. We're bringing together local government, researchers, community members, other stakeholders, people who are just invested in the pier, and really trying to get at our key goals, which are first to determine where our pollution is located. So where along the beach are we seeing higher or lower levels of bacteria? We also want to identify key sources. So what is actually causing this pollution? Is it birds? Is it leaking infrastructure? Is there something else at play here? And then from there, we're going to be providing the city with recommended actions to resolve this issue. So tangible things that we can do to try and fix this problem in a timely manner. And so with these goals in mind, we've done a couple key analyses that are going to help us answer some of the questions that we have surrounding the water quality at the pier. The first thing that we've done is an analysis of historical data, and then we went and we did some of our own water quality sampling. So when it comes to the historical data, we've got a pretty rich data set here. We're working with over 20 years worth of data. In the county, they go out and they test several times a week at the pier. So we've got a pretty good data set that we can work with. And we can kind of try and understand some of the trends here. So this is a graphic that I like to show people. It is a little bit complicated, but we can kind of go through it together. And this kind of explains some of the trends that we've seen. So this is our monthly average bacteria results at the Santa Monica Pier. You can see that in our yellow line here. And on our y-axis, we're working with our average results. What you got to know here is that the higher level of bacteria that we have, the higher the chance of people getting sick is. And then the inverse is true. The lower levels of bacteria, the lower the chance someone has of getting sick when they come in contact with this water. On our x-axis, we're working with a time series here. So you can see we're working with the last 20 or so years of data here. And then we've got our red line there that goes across the whole graphic. That is our state standard for this specific bacteria. So like I said earlier, the state has said, hey, anything above this is considered unsafe for swimming because the risk of getting sick is too high. And what we can see when we work our way through the graphic is a couple of things. When we look in the past, we can definitely see some variability both between years and within years. So between years, there are some years where we've got higher levels, some years where we got lower levels. If you look closely and you look at a specific year, we can see that there's typically higher levels of bacteria during the wintertime and lower levels during the summertime. And we can see that section right around 2010 through about 2013. That's when we saw that improved grade. That was following infrastructure that the city implemented to try and fix this issue. So we actually have seen some improvements in the past. But what we're seeing is that since about 2020, we've seen much higher levels of bacteria. We're seeing these monthly averages really increase over time. And what we can see is that since about halfway through 2020, we haven't had a monthly average drop below that state standard. So what that means is that we haven't had a full calendar month where on average, the bacteria results mean that it's safe to swim at this location. So the last 6 years or so, we've seen unsafe swimming conditions here on average. And when we compare some of these monthly averages, what we can see is that we've got some monthly averages up to 20 times greater than the state standard for this specific bacteria. So not only do we have a chronic issue here, but we've got kind of a chronic high level of pollution. Go for it.
Have you correlated this with weather?
So we have looked at like rainfall years, things like that. We do see higher levels of bacteria after rainfall typically. So that big spike there is, I want to say August of 2024 when we had that big, I want to say hurricane, but that might not be the right word. So we definitely do see higher levels after rainfall, but not sort of significant enough, I guess, in these terms because we're just seeing so much bacteria and we're seeing really high levels during the summer when we've got no rainfall. Yeah.
So you're not breaking out weather events at all. It's that indistinguishable. It doesn't really matter. It's not a factor that you guys are considering.
Yeah, that's exactly
That's
right.
interesting.
So once we kind of looked at those trends, we had some questions that we could answer further using some more historical data. The first question that we had was, well, like, how does this compare to the rest of the Santa Monica Bay? Is this a problem that we're seeing across sites along Santa Monica Beach? And so to do that, we looked at water quality data at nearby sites. So there's a testing location directly to the north of the pier, that's at the end of the Wilshire storm drain, and one that's directly to the south of the pier at the Pico-Kenter storm drain. And when we looked at the data, what we found is that there have been some increases in recent years at these locations, but overall water quality is a lot better at these nearby sampling locations. And we found that it's generally safe to swim during the summertime at these places. So that's good to note that this does not seem to be something that's more widespread. It does really seem to be specific to the pier itself. And it's also good to note that if people are asking where it's safe to swim, we can suggest going to these locations that are a little bit further away. Yeah.
So the breakwater is at the end of the pier. Mm-hmm. And so wave action has a lot to do with elevated bacterial levels mm-hmm. in ocean water. Mm-hmm. So is really what we are seeing is low wave action due to the breakwater contributing to these elevated fecal coliform concentrations adjacent to the pier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. As part of our task force, we have some folks from the UCLA breakwater team. They're going out and they're testing basically the circulation around the pier and around the breakwater. So they're trying to help us understand a little bit more about the circulation closer to the pier. They're not looking quite like directly under the pier per se. So that is something that we are hoping to be able to do. Hilo Bay doesn't have the capacity to like test for those sorts of things. So it's kind of under, I guess, other groups to like be able to complete that.
I was just looking at the analysis of historical data. I was wondering if you have reviewed the data that I worked for the city back in mm-hmm. the 2000s, and we contracted with UCLA and Heal the Bay, Jenny J,
Yep.
to do. So do you have all of that data from her study as well? Okay.
Yeah, so we've looked at that. I think there was some collection of sand samples in addition to some water quality testing. So we've looked at those results as well, and kind of are taking those into account.
Got it. Great.
Yes.
Is the UCLA project of circulation the pink?
Yes.
The pink study?
That's right.
And my understanding was that at least the first round of releasing the pink dye was, there wasn't much information that was gathered from that. Is that accurate? I've just heard this in passing. I was wondering if you have anything more concrete, if anything tangible was.
I can't speak to that,
Okay.
unfortunately. But I do know that they're sort of continuing their
They're going
studies.
to continue to do more.
That's my understanding, yeah. Yes.
Ashley, I know that I think they did another one with the Baykeepers, Tom Ford's and UCLA. They did a round 2, and I haven't seen the results of that yet. But I also had a question for you, which is you showed us the graph with the coliform bacteria. Have you done the same graph with the E. coli as well as the Enterococcus?
So what we see is that we have a similar trend across all 3 of our indicators of that around 2020, really seeing that uptick. Fecal coliforms, the one that I showed you, that's analogous with E. coli. That is sort of the prevailing bacteria that we see that has the highest exceedance rate, but the other 2 that we look at are having higher exceedance rates in the last couple of years and are seeing an increase in concentration as well.
Do you guys use IDEX testing equipment?
That's right, yeah.
And are you following the county protocol of 1 sample per site?
What do you mean by that?
Well, when you see the people go out and they take samples with the stick, they usually just collect 1 bottle at 1 location.
Yeah, that's right. So basically when we go out and we do our testing, let's say we're not just testing on the south side of the pier, that's the county location. We're also testing at various other locations. So we'll take just 1 sample at most locations. Sometimes we take a duplicate and test those separately. But yeah, we're just taking 1 sample.
The reason I ask is because my students for maybe about 5 or 6 years took 3 samples per site. And we discovered quite a bit of patchiness within our samples. And we use the same one, the same standard as Heal the Bay in the county with the IDEX testing equipment. So I was wondering if you've overcome that patchy distribution of bacteria and making sure you're not getting false positives and false negatives.
Yeah, so we've done like duplicates before. Those typically end up being around the same. We've also done sampling sprints. So we'll take 1 sample every minute for 10 minutes at the same location. So trying to just get diversity in the data sets that we're working with and just trying to get as much data as we can to try and get an overall picture at this location. Okay, we'll keep going. So another question that we had after we kind of looked at those nearby sampling locations was, well, how does our pier compare to other piers across the state? We know that pier locations typically attract a lot of human activity. They also attract a lot of bird activity. So we had the question of how do we compare to other piers across the state? And so how we did this is we looked at 7 different pier locations around the state. Some of them have had some similar water quality challenges in the past as well. And when we look and we compare those to our pink line, which is our Santa Monica Pier, we can see that prior to 2020, the levels were pretty comparable at the Santa Monica Pier as compared to these other locations. But that since that 2020 mark, when we see this really big uptick in bacteria levels, we're seeing much higher levels at our pier as compared to other piers anytime within the last 20 years. So kind of noticing that bacteria levels are much higher at our location. So those are kind of our key historical analyses. Once we completed those, we then went out and did some of our own water quality sampling to answer some questions that we couldn't answer using our historical data. So we've done 3 major testing events so far. The first one was studying bacteria levels throughout the day. So for this one, we took one sample every hour for 16 hours at 3 different testing locations around the pier. And for this, we're really trying to understand how bacteria levels change over the course of a day and whether there are any environmental factors that we can attribute to higher or lower levels of bacteria. From there, we did we studied the bacteria levels at many different sites around the pier. So for this one, we took samples at 19 different locations around the pier, trying to understand where we see our highest levels of bacteria. And then from there, we did some source identification analysis or DNA testing, trying to figure out what is causing this bacteria. So here's a graphic that shows all the different sampling locations where we've taken samples at. We've got sampling locations every 20 meters up to 100 meters in either direction of the pier, 2 sampling locations underneath the pier, and then 5 sampling locations off the top of the pier. And when we take samples, we've tried to take them during various conditions. So during the daytime, during the nighttime, in the morning, in the evening, during different swell periods, during different tidal periods, really trying to capture a diverse data set. And then once we actually take our samples, we bring them back to the Heal the Bay Aquarium, which is underneath the Santa Monica Pier, ironically enough, where we're able to process our samples and read our results. And so far for this project, we've taken over 130 samples. Each sample costs us an estimated $150 to process. So some of that is being funded through the grant that we're getting through the city, but Heal the Bay's philanthropic efforts have also funded a fair number of samples that we have taken. And so in terms of the results, what we've found is that when we take samples off the top of the pier, in those locations off some of those fishing decks, underneath that sort of top section, what we found is very minimal levels of bacteria at these sites that are on top of the pier. And so that suggests to us that bacteria is unlikely to be coming from an offshore source. The inverse is true when we take samples on the shoreline. We see a lot of bacteria in these shoreline samples. That's where people are playing. That's where the waves are crashing, those sort of areas down there. And specifically, we're seeing the highest levels of bacteria under and around the pier itself. So that suggests to us the bacteria is likely to be coming from this area, and that is kind of where our key source is. It is worth noting, though, that when we've taken samples 100 meters away from the pier, that's the furthest that we've taken samples so far, we have seen unsafe levels of bacteria. And so that suggests to us that at least right now, this area around the pier is not safe for swimming. And until we can kind of research further or sort of implement some changes, we suggest staying even further away from the pier. So here's kind of a recap of those key findings. Any questions on those? Go for it.
We've been told for years that it's the birds, right? And there's been netting, expensive netting that's been, and I don't think there's been significant changes. There was a slight improvement, I was told, for a short period of time, but can we definitively say if this is attributed to birds or not?
That's my next slide.
Okay.
You're good. So I wish I could tell you today. I unfortunately cannot tell you today, but I can tell you that we have received our samples back from our partner organization. So we went out, we took our samples, we sent them off to a lab that can help us process them because we don't have the right equipment for that. They just sent us those back, and we're now working on analyzing those results. So we should have those by the end of the month, ready to go to kind of help inform all of this. But these results are going to help us identify what the source of bacteria is. So there's DNA testing where we can take a sample, we can look at the DNA sequences that are in the water and attribute those back to a specific source. The 3 sources that we're looking at are birds, humans, or dogs. And from there, we can quantify that so we can kind of compare how much bacteria is coming from what the different sources are. And once we have that, we'll really be able to kind of inform recommendations that we're going to make. And so when it comes to potential solutions, it really does depend on the source that we identify. If the results come back with really high levels of bird markers, and we identify that birds are the main source of bacteria here, we need to think about excluding or removing birds from underneath the pier. So here's a photo that I took on one of our sampling days. There are over 200 birds just at this location right under the pier itself. So we need to think about how we can get them to not be underneath the pier itself. And as we kind of just talked about here with the bird netting, it's been installed in the past, but vandalism and storms and waves and wind have kind of taken it down. And so installing something that's a little bit more durable, like bird wiring, has proven to be successful at other locations around the state. So up in Santa Cruz, they had a similar issue. They installed this bird wiring, and it's been very effective for them. It's been able to withstand all those things like vandalism, big waves, all of that stuff. So installing something like this will help prevent the birds from roosting and perching underneath the pier itself. And if we determine that human markers are the main factor here, we need to start thinking about infrastructure improvements. So if human markers end up being the main contributing factor here, we know we've got some sort of leak in our stormwater or wastewater infrastructure here. So you can see there's a ton of different pipes that run underneath the pier itself. We've been able to identify a couple of leaks in those pipes. We've been able to test a subset of those, and we did find no bacteria in the leaks that we did find, so that is good news. It seems like that's fresh water leaking, but if there's another pipe that we haven't been able to identify that is leaking, we would need to think about fixing that. We also know that there is a lot of stormwater infrastructure that is underneath the pier and around the pier. We were able to go down and visit the storm drain and found some significant ponding in this area. We did test the water here and found very high levels of bacteria in this sort of ponded water under the storm drain, and we're able to identify a fix that needed to be made further up in the diversion system. And so making sure that we're maintaining these systems and ensuring that they're not leaving sort of pools of very dirty water will also help us make sure that the beaches are cleaner and safer. Go for it.
So when we talk about coliform and Enterococcus nicolai from a bird versus those bacteria, is there any difference in human effects, like the deleterious nature of those bacterial species given off by a bird versus a human?
Mm-hmm. My understanding is that these bacteria can come from both birds and humans, so there's no way to identify what that source is solely by looking at these specific bacteria that we test for using IDEX. My understanding is that if they were to come from humans, they would be more harmful to people, like they would get they're more likely to get sick, but I don't have the specific numbers or statistics.
Because I thought that one of the issues is that maybe these bacteria they're indicators, but when those indicators are high, it suggests that maybe other, like viruses, are present in the water.
That's
not right. So I'm wondering if we've done any viral testing as well. Have we?
So we cannot test for viruses. They're pretty hard to test for. That's kind of why we use these fecal indicator bacteria. This is kind of just what the state has set out. And they say this amount of bacteria usually is attributed to this amount of like fecal matter in the water. So that's my understanding. I did see a hand from Mark Gold, who is
maybe we should direct one of these questions. I know Mark was involved with an epidemiological study at some point, but I'm wondering if there's been more recent epidemiology put into this, given it's an ongoing problem for the last several decades. Is there any more recent data tracking people who've swum after storms and when there's high exceedances, or are we relying on decades-old research? So Mark, I think you walked in just as our speaker was Naomi, was it?
That's right. Yeah.
Some new results are coming out. And what organization are they coming out from that Heal the Bay is working with on?
Yeah, so we sent off.
Could you just summarize what Mark said
Oh.
into the mic so we have captured it a little bit?
Yes. So, yeah, Mark Gold walked in about 2 slides late. But yeah, we were just asking about whether these fecal indicator bacteria are actually indicative of sort of human illness. And what Mark was saying is that all the studies in the past have found that especially enterococci are pretty correlative with human illness of gastroenteritis issues. Yeah. Go for it again.
So you may not have heard, but I think some new results are coming out.
Yes. Okay. Yes, good question. So like I was saying earlier, we have taken our samples. We just got our results back from SCORP, so the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project. They were nice enough to process our samples for us because we don't have the right machines to do that. And so they basically just process the samples for us, and now we have to actually like look at the data and analyze it.
That sounds like a big press release at the end of the month.
No comment.
Well, I know the city has spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars with our committee putting up netting that ended up having holes in it. And so I documented pigeons underneath the pier that were kind of getting in. It was kind of provided nice protection from the hawks that normally probably prey upon some of those pigeons. So maybe that, the fecal coliform spike that we're seeing is protected pigeons underneath the pier pooping themselves into oblivion. Yes. I'm not sure, but I think the wiring may end up doing a good job if the data end up saying that it's from birds.
Exactly.
I think that's a huge thing. I wanted to also comment something that Josh told us in our last meeting, which may be relevant for everyone to understand, which is according to Josh, there were people who went in and surveyed. There are 2 bathrooms at the bottom of the pier, and for a while I was thinking maybe it's not the birds, maybe we just have leaky pipes in those 2 restrooms underneath the pier that are, leaking sewage. But they went in, did an inspection, and they did not find any leaks in those pipes, according to Josh. So, curious where this source is coming from.
Yes, definitely. Us too. Go for it. Is it Jerry? Okay.
Sorry. Thanks. And I guess you're saying north and south of the pier, a certain distance, right?
That's right.
This other question I don't know, it's something that had come up years ago that the community wanted, but it seemed like it wasn't a good idea to have a dog park at the beach somewhere. Some safe area away from the water that everyone would clean up like good dog parents always do. So you mentioned that it's unlikely to have this be a main source from dogs. I'm just wondering if there is any objection from Heal the Bay in this day and age to consider having a dog park in some small location for a trial period in the future.
Yeah, I don't think I can speak on that from Heal the Bay's perspective right now. If that was something that was like brought to wider attention, I think we'd be able to comment on it, but at the moment, unfortunately, can't. Go for it.
So have you or Heal the Bay tried to tease out the spike in 2020? Because if you look at the chart where you are comparing Santa Monica Pier to the other piers, it's right around 2020 when all of their coliform bacterial levels decrease and stay decreased, and the ones at Santa Monica Pier increase hundreds fold. So was the sampling has remained consistent throughout. So all of the things that one might expect would contribute to such sort of a difference have been accounted for.
That is our understanding, yeah. They're testing using like state methods. Because it's a county, I mean, maybe they changed certain things with their testing methods that I know I can't speak to, but it's our understanding that they should be similar testing results. And we're also seeing this across 3 different indicators, and you kind of have to process them differently. So that kind of also validates that these upticks are happening.
I'm looking at this,
okay.
this one. So I'm just trying to understand, Santa Monica is kind of bouncing along, never exceeding 1,000. And then all of a sudden there's a gigantic spike. And then it stays elevated for 5 years, and now it's coming down. And nothing has changed from data collection, from data analyses. The material methods are the same, the number of samples. I'm assuming the purple line is from Heal the Bay.
So we don't actually go out and do any of our own testing on like a regular basis. So we go out and we do specialized studies if we want to answer questions that we can't answer using this data, but the county collects all of this data and we just sort of download it and use it.
LA County.
I thought it was the county, but it could be City of LA. The jurisdictions are never quite clear to me.
So Heal the Bay is not producing the data, an outside entity is, so we don't really know with certainty what accounts for the spike. Like if it's an artifact of data collection, data analysis, time of the year, rainfall event, not rainfall event.
So my understanding is that the city has been testing multiple times per week for the last decade or two. I don't believe that they've changed any of the frequency in the testing. I haven't looked at the time that they've taken samples. That could potentially be contributing to this change. So there could be some issues with that, but I'll just kind of bring back the graphic here is that we've got some monthly averages that are up to 20 times greater than the state standard. So if we've got a monthly average that's almost 8,000, we want to be under 400. So even if they took a sample like 30 minutes after or an hour later on average, we're not going to get down to 400 or below just by making that change typically. We're working with a lot of bacteria here.
And Susan, the other thing is, if it was an issue with the testing, you would likely see up and down the beach and at like Manhattan Pier and other places, some correlation with that. And that doesn't show up.
Nobody seems to know where the data is coming from. So now I've heard that the city of Santa Monica is collecting the data. The city of LA is collecting the data, the county of LA.
So
You have to push the button.
this is quite a nostalgia for me. It's pressed.
We did.
Thank you. So unless something's changed, which I doubt it, City of Los Angeles has monitored thank you. Has monitored at Santa Monica Pier for at least 30 years. And they've monitored on average 4 days a week. So it's one of the most monitored sites in all of the state of California. And in this particular circumstance, when you see a spike like this, which is not uncommon, unfortunately, at Santa Monica Pier, Dean and I have been through our wars together trying to solve this problem in a previous generation. It usually has been pointed out to, it's usually been a roosting bird population. And the nets just were not adequately maintained for years at a time. And so, you would just go under there and see that. Now, the Jenny J, if you go back and look at the sanitary survey that she did, Obviously, everybody was freaked out, thinking it was homeless population and looking for human sewage. And the good news was, and it doesn't mean you'll never see a homeless person under the pier, we all have seen it, but it was not a significant contribution. And then there was sanitary survey work that was done at considerable expense where no leaky sewer lines were found. The other issue that does occasionally happen, I don't think it happens anymore, I would assume this has been cracked down upon, was people dealing with hosing off trash bins. And so that was, as you can imagine, also had really high fecal bacteria densities as well. And so there's a whole system that's been put in place. SQUIRP was involved in putting it on how to do a sanitary survey. Many people are involved. Tris Holden at UCSB, Jenny J at UCLA, and Ali Baim at Stanford worked with SQUIRP to put together the sanitary survey protocol to actually find out, what's causing these sorts of spikes. But when you see this at one beach, it's a problem at the beach. It's not a problem on the methods. And the methods have been standardized and haven't changed at this point for over 20 years, 25 years. So anyways, hope that helps.
Well, no, not really, because it's coming down. So what changed in 2020, and then what has started to change in 2025?
It's coming down to still a completely unacceptable level, and you think that's okay?
No, I'm trying to understand the spike. You have a spike that started in 2020, so that's COVID. So did the bird population increase because there were less people at the beach? I don't know.
Yeah.
Because you had less maintenance of facilities at the beach. That's exactly what happened. So all that netting, you got to walk underneath the pier. You'd see it in 2 seconds. You'll see all the damn holes in the netting, and then you'll see literally dozens and dozens of pigeons there. And it's been the problem from the very, very beginning. And when you're not maintaining it, and that's what ends up happening. I don't know if you want to have a correlation with Santa Monica's O&M budget and have that go there, because that's probably what you really want to see. Mm-hmm. Because no money was going to actually taking care of the pier. That's what happened. So I guarantee it. You'll find out, with SQUIRP, with what they found out. I'm sure birds will be the number one factor here, but that's what's happened time and time again. It doesn't mean you can't have a sewage problem, but that has not historically been the case there.
But in 2022 or 23, what year was the bird netting installed? 250, 400,000?
Ashley, former Ocean Committee
It's
member.
good to have
Yes.
you guys join us, by the way.
Hey, good to be with you guys.
It's early 2023 was when
Early
it was
20
last installed, yes.
So some of these things, like if we go back to that one slide where it says 2011, there was 2 grade A, right? So have we identified what factors were different at that time? I mean, I'm assuming we had birds in 2010. I don't know the conditions of the netting, but then we know in 2023 the netting was installed and replaced and was new for a period of time. There should have been somewhat of an improvement we'd see
Well, I think that might have been the first time we put bird netting in.
2010.
Yeah. And also we had, we tried raptors, which were very effective, but upsetting to some children on the pier, so they stopped doing that. We had pigeon birth control that we were testing, where we were actually putting out feed that when the pigeons were eating this food, it was going onto the top of the carousel building, and that would
Yeah,
so basically there was a lot of stuff that we were doing in those years to address the problem.
Yeah, we've kind of looked at the different infrastructure that's been implemented, and in 2010, the storm drain itself was replaced with a brand new storm drain system. The bird netting was installed, and there were a lot of non-structural BMPs that were tried, like you mentioned, falconry. I've heard a lot of other interesting reports of things that were done, but ultimately, that bird netting was then reinstalled, I think in 2013 and then again in 2023. So seems like maybe some varying sort of levels of success, but I don't have any reports that indicate like the status of the bird netting. So it's hard to know when it was installed in 2023 Like how long did it take to get to the state that it's at now? Was it a matter of months? Was it a matter of years? And was that different from 2010 when it was first installed?
One more thing on maintenance, though, which Dean can attest to, is there's a scour pond in front of that storm drain. You've probably seen it a million times. And if that also is not maintained, then that becomes basically an incubator. And you can get FIBs that go through the roof because it's just warm, stagnant water, and you're seeding it with, obviously all the pigeon. Right. So if that's not adequately maintained on a regular basis, that is an ongoing source. Every time you have a high tide, you get mixing with that pond, with that, and you end up getting high densities as well. So that's another thing that happened over the years.
Go for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the really striking things about your graph is how different the Santa Monica pier is from all the other piers. Do pigeons like Santa Monica more? Like, do they do better bird nets or what?
So I'll show you the graphic here.
Yeah,
I wish I could move from this microphone. Let me just move really quickly to show you the color because it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah.
But look at this color right here.
Yeah.
That one. So that location is Cowles Beach up in Santa Cruz. They were on our beach bummers list actually in the early 2010s, and they did a similar process. They formed a task force. They did bacteria studies. They looked at DNA. They found that birds were the main factor at that location, and they're the ones that installed that bird wiring. And they have since seen major improvements in their water quality and have since gotten off the beach bummers list and now get A and B grades at that location. So that's one example of another location that has historically had really high levels of bacteria, but have since been able to recover.
And why does it take 10 years, if I'm reading that right, for those bird screens to take effect?
I mean,
You think it would happen faster?
Yeah, I guess I'm not a bird person, so I can't speak to bird behavior. But I imagine that they still will like hang around the same area and maybe just take a longer time to move out. But yeah, go for it.
So has anyone tried to correlate this with the wave action at Santa Monica Pier, this spike in particular? I'm particularly interested in all the other data, as Rob pointed out, for all the other piers have shown a relatively steady decline. And the Santa Monica Pier started to show a decline and then showed a gradual increase until 2020. So I'm trying to ascertain what the cause of that is, and that was directing my questions to make sure that methodologies hadn't changed, sampling procedures, et cetera. So now, as a scientist, I would be looking at correlating this with, were there wave patterns that changed, rainfall events that changed? Didn't the city put in the, underneath of the pier, Dean, they put in the treatment, the stormwater capture system underneath of the pier in the last 10 years?
Well, that was just before 2010. I mean, that was one of the main sources of pollution. There was a diversion that went in, and that's what dropped that thing. That plus bird netting and other stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple different infrastructure projects that we've been looking at. So like you were talking about, so 2010, there was the reconstruction of the storm drain and some additional diversion of some of that storm water. And then in 2018, the cistern or the holding tank that's underneath the pier became active. So that was meant to divert essentially all of the dry weather flow and the majority of the wet weather flow from the storm drain to be put down into that holding tank, which would then be sent to SWIP or SQUIRP, or not SQUIRP, sorry, SMURF. So those infrastructure changes also occurred. We know that SMURF turned off in 2020, so maybe that is a potential factor contributing to that. But again, kind of hard to ascertain, I guess, how some of these changes are impacting the water quality as a whole. Yeah, go for it.
So kind of to answer Susan's questions, I'm assuming your data sheets, like when these samples are collected, it's not an extensive data sheets going, oh, the tide and the sunset and the, you know, the shifts in the environmental factors are collected at all. So that's not even something that's being layered on top of this to have any kind of correlation work, right? Are you just looking at infrastructures, correlative events, and birds, or is there any other?
So we've compared the bacteria results to things like tide levels, swells, different times of year. We've looked at water temperature, air temperature, like things like, was it cloudy versus sunny, things like that. We have found that the highest levels of bacteria are during the high tide. So high tide levels are significantly higher than low tide levels at these locations. We found that the hot spot, or like where we're seeing the highest levels of bacteria, has shifted based on the swells. So we predict, or we theorize, I guess, that during the summertime, we have a swell that comes from the south. And during that time, our hot spot is to the north side of the pier. So we figure that that water is getting shifted to the north because that's the direction of the swell. The inverse is true about the winter time, when there are northern swells that come in and it shifts the water from north to south. We find that the hot spot is on the south side of the pier. So we have been kind of looking at some of these varying factors. And in terms of water temperature and air temperature, we didn't find any of those to be particularly insightful. We've done bird counts, human counts, dog counts. None of those have been very good predicting factors. I think those are all the variables that we've looked at.
So water temperature you haven't found to be significant in any of the results?
Not during the daytime when we've done the majority of our testing. The one analysis that we did, our temporal analysis, where we took one sample every hour for 16 hours. That was from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And we didn't find anything extraneous during like the morning hours or the evening hours. I think it would be helpful to test overnight, but I think that is maybe beyond our capacities.
The bacteria, I mean, it's now we've got signs, do not swim advisory signs, all the way to the Montana, well, actually more north of almost to Will Rogers currently right now. And I've never seen that before. It just seems, and I've never seen the quantity in which they're put out. And so is there any, at the current moment, not based on all this analysis, but any factors that you think are contributing to it spreading more north other than the swell at the current time?
Are those the white signs or the yellow signs, or both?
There's both.
Okay. So I've seen the white signs around the pier itself. Those are typically not related to the bacteria levels. They put those out every single day for kind of like beach swimmer safety. I haven't seen any white signs beyond the pier itself. I've only seen the yellow ones, and those yellow ones will get basically installed in the sand anytime that there is an exceedance at these locations. From my last look at the grades, things were typically pretty good at most of the other sites around the pier, around Santa Monica. So I could be wrong about that because I haven't looked, but
I've got a picture for you if you want.
Okay. I believe that there could be individual exceedances, but I haven't seen instances of like persistent exceedances at some of these other locations.
Just one other question about testing. Have you, or are you considering doing any kind of testing of the sand beneath the pier?
So that's something that we've looked into doing, especially when we've got this storm drain here. Sorry, let me.
I remember from Jenny J's study, they were kind of positing that when the high tides came up, basically you were inoculating all that sand, and then because it wasn't being hit by the sun at all, the bacteria would stay in there for a long time. It would regrow and that kind of a thing, which it sounds like if it's moving north and south with the swells too, that might be a similar mechanism that's doing it.
Yeah, so you can kind of see here around the storm drain when Jenny went out and did her testing back in, I think it was the 2010s. She tested the areas around here as well as sort of the preceding areas of the sand going underneath the pier. That is something that we would like to do. Gila Bay does not have the capacity to test for sand on our own, so we would need to partner with another organization or with an academic partner. So again, kind of on their timeline and their budget, but that is something that we're looking into seeing if we can do.
Great, thanks. I think Judy had a question, and then Rob's got another one.
I'm just wondering if the current construction that's going on at the pier, on the bridge mostly, but it's construction that's affecting a lot of different things. And I'm wondering if anybody is looking at whether that's changing anything.
From our perspective, we haven't seen anything in terms of like runoff or flows or anything like that that would be contributing, but we don't like have a daily presence there. So
it hasn't rained since the construction started.
Mm-hmm. Like, I guess I mean, like, if they're hosing things off or cleaning things. But that's not something that we've looked at per se.
I don't know how much in the weeds we want to get, but I mean...
Not much more.
Good, all right. Yeah, I've no sense of the timescales involved. I mean, the sense if there were a bunch of birds and they do their thing into the sand, and then you chase them all away, how long, which presumably is easy to do in short time periods. I mean, how long would it take wave action and such to clean it all up? So, and I'm wondering how that affects when you correlate against bird counts, because, you know, if it takes like a week to clean up and, you know, there was, like you counted them like on 6 days, but on 7th day, they all showed up. You know, I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of the timescales of the measurements and how fast it cleans up.
Well,
and all
I
that
think
sort of
if you
thing.
look at the Cowles Pier,
Yeah.
and and that was one of your questions was why did that take 10 years? And maybe that's why it takes 10 years. Well, maybe it is the birds, and then it's something else that takes the time period. But my assumption is not every single pier mimics Santa Monica Pier. So that they're all going to be different. So they'll all have their own unique set of variables that would contribute to the problems that they face and then the length of time that it would take for them to show a result, assuming, and I believe that Naomi said that they had attributed their issue with birds, and they put in the bird wires, and then you see this steady decline. So that's, you know, I think that if really in order to answer the question, you do need to have an understanding of the wave action. Do these other piers have breakwaters? You need to understand the currents that are caused by the breakwaters. So, you know, if we put netting in and we had this decrease, we get holes in the netting, we have more birds. But then, to me, this anomaly at 2020 is very striking. So, if we do the wires and we have less birds, is there going to be this precipitous drop off, or is it going to be a slow decline and nobody's going to know? And you can't correlate what has been collected because each pier is different, and it doesn't sound like anybody holistically has looked at all of the disparate parts of the puzzle.
Yeah, Mark, do you want to address that, and then maybe we
please.
can wrap up?
Yeah, so when I was running Gila Bay, I sure did. Literally, because I helped create the Clean Beach Initiative, and I helped run it for years, and, over $100 million was spent on this exact issue throughout the state. And a lot of that money went to Santa Monica Pier. And so a couple of things I want to say. Cowell, very similar situation in Santa Monica Pier in that it wasn't one thing. It turned out that at the end of the day, they put in the screens, which was great. But along the way, there was all sorts of sanitary survey work. In that case, it wasn't Jenny J, it was Allie Boehm at Stanford. She found leaky sewer lines. It doesn't mean they didn't have these other problems, but it was a bunch of things that had to get picked off first through the sanitary survey, where you prioritize obviously anything that's a human pathogen first, and then you go to the zoonotic second. And so that's what ended up happening there. So when you look at that as being 10 years, you shouldn't look at it as that's when the screens went in. You should look at it as we did all this other stuff, and it finally started making a difference there. Santa Monica Pier was the same damn way. So I wouldn't say there was, it's just the netting. It was all these other things that were also problems as well. And so like if you fix this and put screens and you're not maintaining that the scour pond, you're still screwed, right? You got to do all of that stuff, and it takes eternal vigilance, unfortunately, on doing that. All it takes is one lessee on the pier hosing down, waste bins or fish guts or whatever the hell's going on, and that's going to add to it as well. One last thing is that I remember this is 12, 15 years ago. Did a study with a bunch of Santa Monica students where we looked at the issue of flow, and when you had a rainfall, and it's 72 hours, don't swim within 3 days of a rain. I can tell you right now that we found, for example, in enclosed beaches, it could be 12 days. Like at a Mother's Beach, could be 12 days or more. Cabrillo Beach, 12 days or more. Right next to a pier, like Santa Monica Pier, we often saw it would be a week to 10 days. So yeah, open ocean, when you got no source of ongoing pollution, it's 3 days. And so I just give that as an example because it's not, as Susan has said quite eloquently, every beach is different. The conditions have to be taken into account. The beauty of the Heal the Bay report card is you can go back and look 35 years. God, I'm freaking old. I created it in 1990, just so you know.
I know, I've read your reports.
So you can sort of look at this, and the reality is you've probably seen it before in some way, and how do you deal with it? But definitely site-specific is the way to go.
That's the same study that his son was involved in, just FYI, with me.
Oh, yeah.
And we also found a bunch shortly thereafter, lots of variability among replicate samples taken at the same time from the same site, which is, a worry for getting false data. But
Go back to my dissertation.
Judy, do you have something really important to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing, and that is that during COVID, that's when the city staff was reduced dramatically.
Right. Mark already
And
brought that up. Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what happened there in the beach pier, operations, but something big must have
Right.
happened because people lost their jobs.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm still curious, though. You have the same graph for enterococcus, which is the one that has that strong correlation with the gastrointestinal stuff, right? And they all kind of look like that, too?
Generally, maybe not as dramatic, but yeah.
Have you guys looked at anything water quality and testing and bacteria results not related to pier? Like what other areas? I'm sure you test in the marina, I'm assuming, or different. And has there been anything? So let's take the pier out of the equation and just look at, has there been spots with somewhat similar bacteria loads? And that can be more attributed to, that should also be like in the marina. There's tons of birds. There's certain different colonies of multiple species of birds, not just pigeons, which I would assume would have the same kind of problem. So have you guys looked at other areas that don't involve the pier necessarily, but
You
the
mean
bird
concentration wise?
Yeah.
I can't say that I've looked at concentrations of bacteria at some of these other locations, but that's where the beach bummers list really does come into play. It does take into account concentration of all three of our indicators and just like general exceedance rates, things like that. And what we're seeing is that the pier is the most polluted beach in California. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
I got one slide left, guys, so
Fantastic.
we'll go through it. Next steps, this is what it's going to look like the next couple months. We are working on a report that's going to detail all this work that is going to hopefully come out fall of 2026, late this fall. We're going to recap all of our testing and analysis and produce our recommendations for the city. So that's going to be coming out in the next couple of months. And then beyond that, really hoping to advocate for the implementation of these recommendations. So wanting to work hand in hand with the city to make sure that these things get done in a timely manner and that they've got the resources and the help that they need to complete these. And then if funding allows, we are hoping to do some ongoing monitoring. So want to track these changes over time, pull additional data if we can, do other studies. But again, that kind of just depends on the funding that we get and the academic institutions that are willing to work with us. So that's all I have. This is my information here. I'm happy to chat individually with people or share any information. But yeah, thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you all today.
Great, thank you, Naomi. Good report. And a good discussion, everyone. And we're excited to hear a follow-up one as soon as you get your report too. So now we're on to a less exciting item. This is our consent calendar. We have two items on here. One is the approval of the Clean Beaches minutes from their last meeting, and one is approval of the Commission on Sustainability minutes from our last meeting. So why don't you call the first one, Marion?
I motion to approve the minutes from our February meeting.
I had a question before giving that a second. Question on page 3, Josh and Clove, on what does DNDS stand for? Sure. So
which number is that?
So page 3, first solid bullet point at the end of that little paragraph there. So page 3, there's an acronym DNDS. Talking about the minutes from February 11th, 2026.
I think that's supposed to say BMP.
Okay. And
yeah, it's supposed to say post-construction BMPs.
okay. And the minutes didn't reflect the why we went from craft water engineering to Stan Tech engineering. Was there what was that due to, and could we include that in the minutes?
Sure. Yeah. So Craft Water Engineering did the feasibility study for the Pico Kenner and the Memorial Park project, and our colleagues or our consultant Stantec is going to take the project, the Pico Kenner project, into final design.
Was there a reason though that was stipulated that should go in the minutes though?
We can add that in the minutes.
Okay. That I think that would be good to put into the minutes. And I don't recall in my notes on the same page 3, it said in the minutes the city's biannual budget for 2027-28 will include adjustments for the Pico Kenner and other projects in order to save funding for construction and seek grant opportunities. Could you clarify what that was about? Because that wasn't something that I remember us addressing in that meeting. I know we skipped a meeting, but that was...
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
So same page 3, bullet point 5, under section 8A, so page 3, just above the B. the city's biennial budget?
Yeah, so we just went through our biannual budget for CIP. It got approved at council in June. So we'll have budget for those projects in the next quarterly reports coming up.
Right, I just didn't recall us addressing the adjustments or potential adjustments owed to the city's budget.
So the adjustments are going to be different than how the budget is shown now for fiscal year 25-26.
Okay. Is there a way to make that added clarification to that bullet point?
Yes.
And with that, with those amendments, I would second acceptance of the minutes. Do we need to make a new motion for that, or is that okay?
No, I don't think you do. You just need to vote.
Okay.
Are you going to call the vote? Or?
Calling a vote to approve the minutes.
With the amendments,
Marion,
aye.
Aye.
Looks like that passed unanimously. Okay, on to the Commission on Sustainability meeting minutes from May 15th. I was not at the meeting. Do any of the commissioners who were there? That said you were.
No, you and I were not.
I make a motion
we
to
weren't, yeah.
approve.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, motion to approve. I'll second that motion.
Briefly, yes.
Any discussion or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously. Great. We are on to public input on the remaining agenda items. Is there any public input on any of the remaining agenda items? Seeing none, we're going on to the staff administrative items, A, which is the Clean Beaches staff presentation. And why don't, you can chair the meeting from here on out.
All right, item number 6. The 6A, Clean Beaches staff presentation for the quarterly budget.
Josh Carvalho, Clean Beaches liaison. So I'm going to run through the quarterly budget for this past year. It'll be the quarterly budget and the yearly budget through June 30, 2026. So we'll start with the budget highlights, A1. So through the fourth quarter of fiscal year 25-26 is as noted on page 2 of the report. CIP expenditures totaled approximately $3.9 million. These funds supported the construction of surface drainage improvements, as well as finalizing the Green Street Master Plan, as well as Memorial Park and the Pico Kenner Outfall Trash BMP project. And we will review each of these projects shortly. Since its inception back in 2008, this fund has received approximately $77.5 million and expended approximately $67.3 million on CIP projects and program operating expenses, leaving a current balance of roughly $10.2 million. So next section, CIP budget. Page 3 presents the revised CIP budget for fiscal year 25-26. Approximately $7.6 million is allocated to the Pico Kenner Outfall Trash Capture Project and Memorial Park Stormwater Harvesting Project. The Memorial Park project is currently going into 90% design with an encumbrance contract of $2 million, and our Pico Kenner project is approximately 10% design with an encumbrance of $1 million. To date, $770,000 has been expended on design of these projects, as well as finalizing the Green Street Master Plan. In addition, just over $3.1 million has been expended on construction of the surface drainage improvement project, which is approximately 98% complete. Next section, budget operations, page 4, presents the revised operations budget and year-to-date expenditures for fiscal year 25-26. The contractual services line item reflects charges for BMP inspection and catch basin cleaning services provided by the city's current contractor, United Stormwater, valued at $565,000 annually for BMP maintenance. Approximately $486,000 has been expended to date on this contract. Approximately $327,000 was allocated for water quality monitoring services conducted by the City of Los Angeles on behalf of our MS4 permit requirements. To date, approximately $284,000 has been expended to the City of LA for these monitoring services. Next section, projected budget 5-year. On page 5 is a projected and tentative 5-year plan. Approximately $13.4 million was front-loaded in the current fiscal year to account for CIP projects in various phases. Of this amount, $3.9 million is budgeted for surface drainage improvements, which began back in July 2025. $7.6 allocated to Pico Kenner and Memorial Park. And approximately $2 million of the $7.6 million has been encumbered by the Memorial Park project. $1 million encumbered by the Pico Kenner outfall project. The city currently finalized and adopted its biennial budget for fiscal year 26-27 and 27-28 in June through our June City Council meeting. And then during the upcoming fiscal year and subsequent quarterly reports, budget construction funding for the Pico Kenner project as well as other Measure V related projects will be reflected. The schedule and current status of these projects are discussed in the following section. Status reports B, permeable surface alleys. Page 7 shows the schedule of the project. We are currently in the design analysis stage. The design consultant is continuing and performing data collection and conducting soil boring testing this month and next to identify optimal locations for permeable alleys and infiltration galleries. The master plan effort will continue and is anticipated to be finalized in fall of 2026. Next, stormwater BMPs, inspection and maintenance, page 8. Summarize the city's existing 5-year contract with United Stormwater, which provides operations and maintenance and inspection services for all city-installed stormwater BMPs. The second catch basin cleaning cycle of the year was completed recently in April and May of 2026. CDS inspections and cleanings for this year are anticipated to be completed in August and early September. So here's a quick recap of some of these numbers. As stated previously, CDS will be cleaned next month. As far as catch basin cleaning for this last round, our contractor removed approximately 20,000 pounds of trash, sediment, and green waste, compared to the 14,000 pounds that was removed during the dry weather season.
Sorry, can you state that again?
20,000 pounds.
From the
From this
CDS or
past-
for the
from-
screens?
For the screens.
Okay. Do we have a number
the
for
catch
the
basin.
CDS units?
The CDS units haven't been cleaned yet,
Okay.
so they'll be cleaned next month. But what they cleaned last year from the CDS units was about 55,000 pounds.
That was October, right? Was that October clean?
October of 2025.
Right.
Next, citywide drainage improvements. So we have a year 1 and a year 2 project going on. Year 1, page 9, we're almost completed with construction. We're at a 98%. This month we should be completed with construction on those areas. Page 10 presents the tentative design schedule for the second year of drainage improvements. Local flooding areas of concern include locations along Michigan Avenue between 12th and 15th Street, as well as along 2nd Street and Mills Avenue. Based on current conditions, the project will most likely require new drainage infrastructure to collect and convey runoff from the roadway into an underground storm drain system to alleviate flooding during the 25-year storm event. Approximately $2.2 million has been budgeted for this second-year project for construction, which will be reflected in next year's quarterly reports in 26-27. Design completion will be early 2027. Next, Green Street's master plan, page 11, shows the final schedule for the project. We received and approved the final Green Street master plan and standard details this month. These documents will be incorporated into the city's standard detail library and will be available for use in future Green Street projects. And then the next project is Memorial Park Stormwater. Page 12 presents the updated project schedule. Design status, currently in the 90% design stage. Staff returned 60% design review comments in March. Measure W application status as at the April 2026 Safe Clean Water meeting, 8 of the 9 projects submitted during the July 2025 application cycle were approved for funding, which included the Memorial Park project.
Woohoo! Wait, that was, so that, it did go through.
Yeah,
So that's going to include the 75% funding from the federal government and 25 from the city, or?
no, that's for Pico Kenner.
That's for Pico Kenner,
That's
sorry.
for Pico Kenner, yeah. Yeah, so we requested 10 million, but we ended up getting 8.3 million, so it was close to what we wanted.
Out of the total 22 million total for the project, is that right?
Yeah, so we're basically funding half through local funding, and then half is through Measure W. Yeah. So that was a big win there. There was a lot of deliberation going on, and we're happy that we got some money for that. So during the April 2026 meeting, the WASP finalized the stormwater investment plan, which has been presented to the LA County Board of Supervisors for authorization of funding allocations for the 8 approved projects. And funding authorization is anticipated by November 2026. Once approved, funding transfer agreements with the participating municipalities will be executed, with funds expected to be dispersed shortly thereafter. Final design and construction. Final design is progressing and anticipated to be completed by the end of 2026, with building and safety and LA County Flood Control District permitting to be attained by May 2027, with construction commencing in mid to late 2027. And last project is Pico Kenner Outfall Trash BMP. Page 13 presents the updated schedule. The final design contract with Stantec Engineers was executed in February of 2026, and we had our project kickoff meeting in March of 2026. We are around the 10% design stage. Stantec has taken on the conceptual design approval with LA County, and they will carry it through final permitting, which is estimated to be obtained early 2027. So current progress, topographic survey has been completed, geotechnical analysis underway, and we're looking to get a de minimis waiver from California Coastal Commission to do the work. Preliminary discussions regarding potential CEQA exemption considerations. Path forward most likely will be a CEQA exemption with a robust analysis called CEQA exemption of an exemption. That's what I was taught by our consultants back there. But so currently, they performed hydrology and hydraulic analysis and evaluation on 3 of the alternatives, which they will discuss in the presentation coming up after this. So they'll discuss 3 options they looked at: the offline treatment. They'll discuss the offline treatment with the channel nets, and then just the channel nets alone. And Sandec will present on this, as I said, after this. And then a comprehensive basis of design report will be submitted to the city by Stantec in September of 2026, outlining data collection and analysis efforts, design alternatives evaluated, the selected preferred alternative, and associated project costs and funding considerations, including capital, O&M, and life cycle costs. And then this was the other item of note. So we submitted an EPA stormwater infrastructure grant in January of 2026. The initial request from the city was 15 million, which was included in the initial House bill, but the Senate came back and put 5.2 million in their bill. So the House bill was 15, the Senate bill was 5.2. So now they have to negotiate a cost, a price that's going to go in the funding bill.
I thought the Pico Kenner that you told us last time that it was a $10 million all-in project, right?
It was, yeah.
We requested 15 though.
Well, we requested 15 worst case scenario. Like, we didn't know which alternative we were going to go with. We didn't know if we were going to go with the nets and the offline system, which is going to be the most expensive alternative.
Okay.
So that one, we put some fluff in there and we requested the 15 million. But, based on what Stantec has done, it doesn't look like it may not be that expensive, based on the alternatives that they're going to present. So we'll probably be getting somewhere between $5 and $15 million for the grant, once it's appropriated through the funding bill.
And just to be clear, this is a EPA funding, some magical pot that they have that right now I'm surprised they're actually funding something like this right now.
I know a lot of the EPA funding has been eliminated. So it's good that, this will be appropriated for Santa Monica funding in the appropriation bill. So that's what we were told by the people at the feds who are helping us get this grant. So
some good people there.
Well, we have a liaison in the city that works with local municipalities and federal.
Okay.
So they connected us with the EPA grant. Yeah. And yeah, so our share would be, so if we get the 5.2 million, it's a 75% federal, 25% local. So we would have to budget 1.75 million. That's that would be the least amount.
And would that come mainly from Measure V funds?
That would be coming from either our stormwater fund or from Measure V. Yep.
And then my usual Josh, I noticed that these dates for getting the Pico Kenner outfitted with StormX and other things that will be presented on tonight, we've seen late 2027 and early 2028 or mid 2028. Now it's going into 2029.
Yeah, that was anticipated schedules, right? I mean, as we got into the design and Stantec will explain it, but I mean, there's a lot more moving parts, with permitting, and then there's things that are out of our control as far as approvals.
I'm just here to push you and the city, of course.
It is moving though. It's moving.
One of the main reasons is because, again, I think it would be really quite, a marvel to show people coming in 2028 for the Olympics, to have all this new infrastructure with signage and everything explaining, hey, here's one of the first, end of the pipe, storm drain capture screens on a sandy beach, which you don't see very often anywhere around the world. And we could be one of that leader, that trendsetter of how to, stop the plastic from going to the ocean, my baby issue. So is there any way we can break down silos and
I mean, if we can come up with efficiencies in the schedule and figure out how to, get approvals quicker. I mean, a lot of things are out of our hands. We have to go through U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We have to go through LA County for permitting. I mean, once, items are submitted to them, it's, we just don't know how long it's going to take. So, and then there's a lot of, other analysis that Stantec had to do as well. So, I mean, it's the schedule we assumed previously was, a tentative schedule. I mean, now that we're more concrete into the design, we can come up with a more reasonable schedule.
Okay, I'll just put that request in to be ambitious and
Fair enough.
Thank you, Josh.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's it for my update. The next thing on the list is going to be the presentation from Stantec. Yeah, so if you guys want to come up.
And you can hear me?
Josh, I had one more question too, I forgot. While they're setting up, in the previous meeting, you had also mentioned, or we had discussed the merit of taking the debris out of the catch basin screens, those 600, or is it 700? Is it six something,
Like
right?
650. Yeah.
And that was Mark, that was some of what you did, Mark, and Tom Ford, previous to this committee. They actually put in the motion to get those screens, which capture a lot of debris, and we're talking tens of thousands of debris being caught within our portion of the Pico Kenner storm drain. But since we're still getting the first flush, we decided to move forward with this end of the pipe solution, or partial selection, so to just finish the job just on PK, since it's our second biggest
Waste management.
outfall of pollution in the Santa Monica Bay, next to the Biona Creek. But I wanted to, you mentioned that you're going to do the checks in September, where as personal observation, the last 18 years, we generally have our first flush in October, November, September being before. I think it would be more prudent, again, just to reiterate what I said in February, to have our united group remove the debris following the first rain, or perhaps no. Sorry, September's good because then we get it before the rain. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, carry on. You're doing great. All right.
Hey, everyone. We're here to present on the Pico Kenner Outfall Trash BMP improvement projects. 10-4 on accelerating the schedule. We heard that. We want to get it in before the Olympics. We're working on our BODR, trying to get that done in September. So we'll try and run through the agenda relatively quickly today. So I'll go through an introduction of the project. Lauren will take us through the design concepts, impacts, and conclusions, and we have a ton of backup slides. So my name is John Abelson. I'm the project manager working for Stantec. I have joined here by Lauren Anderson.
Hello.
I've worked on the Biona Creek interceptor project, and we wrote the feasibility studies for the interceptor project going in the LA River and the one going in the San Gabriel River, and those should both be implemented before the Olympics as well. And the one in Biona Creek is already implemented. We helped the county with permitting on that one. So a lot of experience in trash management in these major outfalls. Pico Kenner is a little unique in that it's an end of pipe solution that has a sand berm that forms during the summertime. But I could talk a little bit about that. Just a little bit of background about the project. In 2010, the Regional Water Quality Control Board implemented zero trash discharge for storm drains into Santa Monica Bay. But we continue to see trash discharges entering, particularly during wet weather storm events. Pico Kenner has historically been one of the largest contributors of trash to the Santa Monica Bay. It's been fairly obvious and a known problem for a long time, been a part of the Clean Beaches initiative. So Stantec was selected with the design project with the following goals: to reduce trash discharge to the bay, to improve stormwater quality and to maintain flood protection. And then that third one's the most important because we're in a multi-jurisdictional area. These storm drains aren't fully owned by the city of Santa Monica, so we need to work closely with our partners at the Flood Control District and the Army Corps of Engineers and the California Coastal Commission and potentially CEQA and NEPA in order to get this project implemented. So it's a pretty complicated project site. It's located about half a mile south of the pier, about 200 feet southwest of the intersection of Pico and Appian Way, and it's located in a very high visibility area. There's 2 5-star hotels located adjacent to the project site, so public perception and impacts to the project area are pretty important. There's 2 concrete channels that flow directly from the beach to the bay. During the summertime, there's a berm that's filled in that stops the water going directly to the ocean. And then during the winter time, that berm is washed out and the water goes directly to the ocean. So that's kind of the operating scenario of these two storm drains. So the beachfront, there's a walking path that goes directly over Pico Kenner. It's the Marvin Broad bike path. The bridge that goes over right now, we assess it in poor condition. So it's going to be interesting working with the county to put these trash interceptors in the storm drain here because they're going to require that the city of Santa Monica operate and maintain 100 feet upstream and downstream of the facility. So we don't know if that means that it includes the bike path or not. So a lot of this is under negotiation with the county at this point. So timeline and key dates. So we've completed the initial H&H analysis and come up with the initial design alternatives. We evaluated the craft water feasibility report and the different alternatives that were completed in there. One design alternative is preferred, and Lauren will talk about the preferred design alternative, and that's the one with just the trash nets capturing trash during wet weather events without the kind of low flow capture devices. And the reasons why we selected that are various due to CEQA compliance, California Coastal Commission compliance, and just ease of project implementation from a cost and maintenance standpoint. So we've been communicating with multiple vendors for cost estimates right now. We're working on our BODR, basis of design report. That's going to be submitted in September 2026. And then we'll be working on our draft design from September 2026 through April 2027. This could be accelerated depending on how permitting goes with these different agencies. And then we anticipate final design submission and approval submitted in June 2027 and final permit and closeout in July 2027. So pretty aggressive schedule from what we think. And I'll hand it off to Lauren to talk about the design concepts.
Awesome. Hello. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the design concepts for the project. Like John mentioned, we're going to get into the preferred alternative, and there will be some discussion on the other 2 alternatives as well. So just to begin, there is a wide array of technology available for trash capture on the market. This can vary from more passive channel nets, which we've discussed, into more complex mechanical devices. So you can see there's floating boom collectors or hydrodynamic separators. When we're choosing design alternatives, we account for things like cost, performance, and adaptability to conditions. Pre-treatment units that are used frequently in the Los Angeles County area include hydrodynamic separators, debris separating baffle boxes, and outfall nets. So with these channel nets that were discussed, we used the previous studies. I know that craft water was mentioned a little earlier, a little mic adjustment there. And we used those as a foundation, and then from there performed hydraulic evaluation on those three alternatives. So in that evaluation, we considered tidal influences, conveyance capacity impacts, trash capture effectiveness, and constructability. The city preferred these nets mainly due to simplicity of design and then consistent capture. Largely, there are minimal hydraulic impacts compared to the offline treatment systems. In particular, there's minimal effects on the water surface elevations, and you are not limited by diversion capacity thresholds as well. The issue with these channel nets, or not so much an issue as a side effect, which we'll discuss more in depth later, they do require more frequent inspection and cleaning. Here, I also have some draft plan views and section view I will get into next of what these would look like in the channel. So you saw those images beforehand. These are some draft drawings that we have as well. There is the plan view, and then there is the section view. So you see there are multiple channel nets. With these alternatives that were mentioned, both of these have an offline treatment system component. One of them includes those trash nets as well. So both of these use control structures to divert lower flows into these offline treatment units, and the way these work, they essentially prevent leaching of hydrocarbons and oils into the water. These higher flows are going to bypass the system through the channel, so these structures would only take in lower flows during storm events. However, what we found throughout our design and with this hydraulic evaluation is that there is a risk of overtopping the channel during higher risk-based flows. There's also some maintenance concerns to take into account. So like John mentioned, there are multiple reasons that the channel nets were selected as the preferred alternative. But with the offline treatment system, we're really taking into account those hydraulic impacts. There's an issue of sand backwash during high tide. There's also permitting. So these would require excavation into the sand, which would get into some jurisdictional things. Yes. And then moving forward into impacts. So we heard from Naomi, and we're going to get into some more Heal the Bay data again. So Heal the Bay provided us with two data sets that really, I think, paint the picture of what that trash problem there is at the Pico Kenter outfall site. So in our preliminary analysis, we received this data set from various cleanup events that Heal the Bay has performed between 2009 and 2021. And what this really shows you is the scope of trash that's found at that site. So we're seeing here both a count and a type of trash that is found in the area. And like I mentioned, this is at, I think, 5 separate cleanup events. So you can see that extensive and consistent historically. Again, we have that beach report card. So I know that there was some discussion on fecal indicator bacteria. I know that we looked at the Santa Monica Pier site, but this is the beach report card in particular for the Pico Kenter outfall. You can see that there is a consistent historical issue during wet weather events with that fecal indicator bacteria. So really what we're showing here is that there is an issue in general with trash. So just going forward, thought these images kind of conveyed the issue well. These are both from Heal the Bay as well. So this is both after wet weather events, and you can really see that trash buildup on the beach that needs to be addressed. So overall benefits, economy-wise, it's been mentioned before, it'll be mentioned again. This is in a really high visibility area, so public perception is of high importance. Tourism and recreation would both be boosted by improving those visual aesthetics as well. There's a reduction of financial burden on coastal communities for continuous cleanup as that trash becomes an issue. Environment-wise, as I'm sure we're aware, beach litter, like 6-pack rings, can entangle marine animals. There's also the issue of animals mistaking plastics for food, and trash in that water can inhibit the growth of aquatic vegetation. I really like this comparison. I think this gives a good visual idea of what those channel nets are capable of. So each of those trash nets can capture approximately 21 cubic feet of trash and debris. If you account for the entire channel of trash nets, that's about 399 cubic feet. So a standard City of Santa Monica trash can is about 60 gallons. That is the equivalent captured in those channels with those nets of 45 garbage containers or 399 basketballs, if that's easier for you guys to imagine. Again, community-facing design, this is really key. So the intention here is to incorporate both architectural and landscape treatments to address beach aesthetics and public acceptance. So throughout the design process, not only are we accounting for the system itself, but also how it can be implemented to improve public perception or reduce visibility to the bike and walking path and beach users. Also figured worth mentioning, Los Angeles County has a separate project to cover the channel as well, which will help with visibility. And we're really trying here to optimize that final design to minimize any maintenance requirements and impacts to residents and visitors and ultimately prevent future rework. If these nets are selected, they're about 2 feet tall. They would be set into the channel as well. So looking into operations and maintenance more so for those channel nets, like I mentioned earlier, it would require frequent inspection and cleaning to prevent excessive debris buildup. In the case that channel nets become clogged, the flood risk does increase because they act as a weir and increase the water surface elevation. So it is really critical that consistent maintenance is performed. So these can be emptied using appropriate lifting equipment or a 2-person crew. Those nets need to be manually disconnected from their anchoring or from the orifice unit, and then the trash would be vacuumed out before the nets are put back into place. As well, like John mentioned, and like Joshua mentioned as well, there is a lot of multi-agency coordination that is necessary. So the city of Santa Monica, Stantec, we have to coordinate with agencies on the local, state, and federal level in order for this project to be implemented. And in the course of that, we need to be looking at limits of jurisdiction, collect data on sensitive and significant environmental and cultural resources, and meet design and safety guidelines. So some of those agencies are listed here. You can see Los Angeles County Flood Control District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, State of California Department of Parks and Recreation, the State Board, and then the California Coastal Commission. So, moving forward, our next steps, we're going to be submitting that basis of design report in the next month, that draft report, and then ongoing permitting work and agency coordination will continue. Ultimately, our design will be finalized in July of 2027, but like John mentioned, acceleration is always the goal. So, any questions? Yes.
The trash is vacuumed out. Could you go into more detail?
So there's 2 ways to empty these trash nets. One is to lift them up with a crane and then move it onto the sand and then move it out manually. The other one is to use a Vector truck. So a Vector truck could typically vacuum up, it gets 26 vertical feet of trash out of a net. And I don't know if the city already has a contractor who uses Vector trucks, but that's typically how CDS units are emptied.
So a crane?
A crane, yes.
A crane, like a big crane. A crane's going to come onto the beach and lift up.
It could, yeah. In a situation where you need to remove and maintain one of those nets, or you could just have a 2-man crew enter the channel and vacuum it out.
Gotcha.
So there's 2 ways to kind of maintain
So
this.
do we have an estimate of how frequently the debris is going to need to be removed?
After every storm, we would say. I would say after every storm, the city should go and maintain these trash nets. We wouldn't anticipate a lot of trash mobilization unless there's a storm event occurring.
Okay. So, and it doesn't matter the severity of the storm, it's just after every storm?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And so then you mentioned the city is responsible, so it's the city bears the cost of removing the trash.
Correct. So the county is going to put in their permit stipulations that the city is to maintain 100 feet upstream and downstream of these trash nets. We need to negotiate with the county what exactly that means, whether it means, maintaining the channel walls or whether it means, just maintaining our trash nets and any debris that accumulates around them. So.
And then where does the trash go? Because Lauren, right, you had mentioned TPH is a potential for coming downstream. So are we concerned that there are additional contaminants besides just trash in the trash?
So what we've noticed in the Bayona Creek Interceptor is not a lot of hazardous debris comes down. You know, there's no way to separate out, you know, the recyclables from the organics from, you know, the trash from the not trash. And they've just been sending everything to the landfill. So that's how they've been maintaining it next door at the Bayona Interceptor, and how we anticipate you guys would maintain it over here.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Just very quick question. I couldn't tell from your diagrams where in the channel, like on which side of the bike path would the trash screens be installed?
So we're trying to decide that right now. That's an ongoing discussion with the city and the county. You know, I would prefer that they're higher up in the channel, you know, to avoid the impacts of the high tide. So, but, you know, it's really a discussion with the county at this point in time, where exactly we're going to locate them.
Got it. Thanks.
It's doing it higher up in the channel is, I've watched the first flush, second flush, third flush for 18 years. If you put it high up in the channel, you're going to get backflow, or although you said it operates like a weir, so the water will go over it. Well, I want you guys to realize that I've observed the water go over the bike path on a heavy storm several times. In the middle of the night when everyone's sleeping, I'm there. So I can't see a way, hydrologically speaking, if you want to prevent like flooding, which this will still baffle the water a bit, it's going to have to go westward of the bike path, so seaward, closer to the ocean. I just don't see that. And I have several questions. Is this a StormX product?
We are receiving quotes from multiple vendors right now, so I believe this is a StormX product at this point right now with the draft.
Because the feasibility report did look and name StormX, and that was the one that I brought to our committee's attention on this, just because it seems to be one of the, you know, a working model around the world. That said, when you describe the size, I haven't seen StormX products that small, like trash can size before. And so I was curious, and we previously, our committee was told that we were going to have, I guess, Josh, was it, we had a previous model where we were going to have like, was it 12 or three rows of 6 or 2 rows of, how many nets did we previously see in the feasibility study? Because it's vastly different than having, how many nets did you guys, trash can size?
So this is the product that we're talking about. Units installed 24 inches center to center, 15 units for the Kenter Canyon drain, 4 units for the Caltrans relief drain is what we're.
Sorry, it's hard to hear you.
Oh, sorry. It's 24-inch unit center to center spacing. And we're looking at 15 units for the Kenter Canyon drain and 4 units for the Caltrans relief drain. And the reason why we went with the 24-inch units was to reduce the hydraulic impact on the channel. So we wanted to reduce the flooding as much as possible. So we don't want any flooding to occur in the channel. I mean, not reduce the flooding as much as possible. I misspoke. Have a low profile trash net as possible, so that the county will accept it.
I dislike this model for another reason is because, to be frank with you, when I have observed the flow, the water gets really high during the first flush, and a lot of the floatable plastics are going to, that thing's going to fill up, and plastics, we're going to still have a dirty beach. I'm sorry, this is not feasible.
Yeah, so it really depends on, you know, a discussion with the county, what's acceptable to them. We could try and go with bigger, you know, a bigger trash solution, You're thinking like a 36 inch or even a 48
Well,
inch?
the nets that I've seen on Storm X, they're quite sizable, and previous discussion was we were going to have kind of a wide outflow beyond the bike path again toward the ocean, and then that would spread the water out, and they would be substantially high to capture the floating fraction, the floating plastics. Half of plastics sink, half of plastics float. And so if we're gonna do justice to our shoreline and make it pretty and prevent what I've observed for 18 years in a row, then we have to do it right. And if you put in low lying, the water's gonna, maybe on a very small storm, but that's not gonna be enough water to actually flush the sand, scour the pathway into the beach. And the city of Santa Monica working with, I don't know if it's the county or the city, but I think it's the city, in their channelization attempt, they don't always channelize the sand to create an outflow for the water. So you have this behavior of the first flush where the water comes out and it pools in 50 yards either direction of, actually both directions of the storm drain mouth, the outfall. So,
Thinking of widening.
and what is the mesh size of the net? That was another question. And the diameter of these nets those are two really important factors. And there's a third thing I'll mention while you guys are looking those up, is that having a vacuum is going to be nearly impossible because anyone who's seen that water pool after a storm, the water stays in the mouth of the Pico Kenner storm drain. It doesn't just all go out after it ends raining. You have a big cesspool of water there for sometimes months. And so you need, a vacuum's not going to work. You're definitely going to need a mechanical device, which is what I've seen with the Storm X. They unhinge the nets, they take it, they dump it out into a truck, and then they relodge the net for the next flush. In Santa Monica, we don't get a lot of rain, but on many of the 18 flushes that I've observed, I've seen 5 or 6 of them that are just crazy amount of water coming through. And so, and then you have several storms in a row. You might have 3 big rain events in the season, and each one will have a flush. Each successive flush will have less and less plastic debris, which is really what we're trying to prevent from accumulating on our shoreline. But it's really important. See that doesn't look like a 24-inch, what's the 24-inch in reference to again? Is that the diameter?
Sorry, so that was the center to center, yes. So this was just an image that I had pulled to show the channel nets in particular. And then it's 8 to 10 feet woven HDPE nets as well.
That's length. Most importantly, though, is length is important, but diameter of the mouth of the net. Yes. What is that?
Sorry, I think I was looking at the wrong thing.
Because we're talking about a multi-million-dollar project, and I've been serving on this committee for 10 years, and we have to get this right because we're spending, real estate tax money, Measure V funds, and this design has to be perfect the first time. We can't say, we didn't design it right and there's still plastic on the shore, and then our committee has to go and do this again. We have to spend the money very wisely the first time, and that's why we got to get the hydrology right. The mechanical arms to take them out and empty them. I love the idea of doing it after every storm, but you're sitting in a pool of water. So you're going to have a really fancy machine to reach over 20, 30 feet into the middle to get the middle net out and bring it over. You're going to have some really dedicated scuba divers risking their life going across a 2 to 3 foot pool of water, to get to the nets to empty them. So would it be better to create a cement channel to the west of the bike path?
So I think what you're talking about is widening the channel at the end to increase
So that we
width
don't
of
have
capture
hydrology
area.
problems. No flooding, yeah.
Yes. So that would require a lot of conversation with the county to basically re-engineer their channel. I don't think it's impossible at this point, but it would be a huge deviation from, the project as it's been kind of composed to date. So Josh and I will just need to talk to the county and see if that's a feasible alternative for them. I wouldn't say it's impossible. They're talking about covering their channel. Their bike path is in awful, awful condition. Like if you look under that bike path, you can see exposed rebar and it's falling apart. Probably needs to be elevated. Channel capacity could definitely be increased. So I wouldn't say what you're talking about is an impossible alternative, but this alternative that we're presenting right now is acceptable to the county. I just wouldn't want to present anything that's unacceptable to the county because then it's just a no project alternative at that point. So they have final say on jurisdictional, like what we could do and what we can't do. But I hear you loud and clear. This is an unacceptable alternative.
It's not going to work.
Okay.
Period. Sorry to be that guy, but I know this storm drain very well. And having, you're talking about this tall. You'll get the initial flow, and then as soon as that flow goes up 5-6 feet, which I've seen it regularly, all of that plastic's going to go out there. It's not going to work. And we're going to have to push that out beyond the bike path where we're going to get flooding.
Yeah, so what was the design event that we designed for the 90th percentile, I think? 95th percentile. 99.75 percentile is what we designed for. So.
Yes, I get engineering and I understand the whole. I've served on this committee for a long time, and I've also observed this along with many people here for a long time. And so, if you know the behavior of that storm drain, you know that you're going to need something taller, right, to get all the flow in the net. And you're going to have a floating fraction of plastics that are just going to bypass the net if you're only a 2-foot wall, right? Especially in such a narrow channel, right, where the water piles up. As soon as it goes past the bike path, past the two concrete walls, yeah, the water opens up and goes in all the directions. That's where you need the StormX product.
Understood.
Yeah, is there anything or would it be appropriate that this prestigious commission can send a letter of support recommending to the appropriate agencies how we need to get it right, why this is so important? Would that help you? Is that really?
I think that would be a letter of support is always appreciated. Josh shows up at our meetings, but I think, if there's a commission behind it, it's pretty helpful.
Because I think that is almost obvious. If we're going to do it, nobody's going to be wrong. What's the point?
I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way. I just want to be very clear that, this is a $10 million plus project. We want to make sure that we're getting a bang for the buck. And in my duty, part of our purview is to make sure that we're getting products that work in the most effective way, right? That's the purview of our committee. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to be that guy because I want this to work. We're on the same team, but we need to. I think we need to rethink this. Is right, and I mean that in the most respectful way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we were designing this for the 95th percentile hydrology. So 5% of storms would bypass and overtop. 95% of storms. So as engineers, we just need to figure out what the acceptable criteria is to this committee or to the city.
You want to wrap it up?
So your alternatives, you have an offline treatment system and an offline treatment system with trash nets, and you were talking about how those would have to go in the sand.
Yeah.
Sorry, technical difficulties while I zoom back out. Yes, there are two other alternatives that we performed hydraulic evaluations for. The offline treatment systems, I could actually go ahead and go to those slides down here because maybe those will be a little more helpful. They have some more information on them. All right, here, yes. Well, so essentially that offline treatment system, there's a debris separating baffle box for the Kenter Canyon drain, and then a hydrodynamic separator in the Caltrans relief drain, which is that smaller one. And then in the second alternative here, it's effectively the same design, but with those trash nets in addition to them. And what we found with these alternatives was that there was a kind of trade-off that occurred where there are some necessary head conditions for those offline treatment units that are necessary. And we also had to account for the issues, the impacts to the water surface elevation and increased flood risk. So there's a very delicate balance there. And I think maybe what John can elaborate on is that we found that those risks were perhaps unacceptable in the purview of design.
Yeah, for the offline treatment system, we found that the head requirement to drop through the debris separating baffle box and the hydrodynamic separator would cause an unacceptable flood risk to the county when the mean high tide level was taken into account. So we could have either done it with a pump station, which the city didn't really want to maintain another pump station within their flood control system, or we could have done it with a weir to artificially increase the water surface elevation within the channel, which would decrease the capacity to the point where the county wouldn't find it acceptable.
So the flood risk, what is flooding?
It would overtop the Marvin Broad bike path. The bike path that crosses the channel right there.
So it just the bike path floods?
The bike path and the beach, it would basically go over the edges of the channel and flood the beach.
Well, we sort of have that situation now.
You have it at the end of the channel, so
yeah.
That's it's a unmaintained, not a flood control system. It's a natural system once it's at the end of the channel. So the county doesn't really concern themselves with that section of the beach.
Has the county already weighed in on these two alternatives?
Yes.
This is what they've approved.
Okay.
Yes, this is what we've discussed with them.
Okay, any other questions?
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
I was on this committee for years with Ben, and I've watched the evolution of it. And part of me feels like I haven't missed a beat when I've been gone for, I think, 2 years. And I feel like I'm still up to speed and still here, except for the design itself. I'm surprised, to say the least, at the way this project has changed compared to when we were waiting on the feasibility studies and all the steps along. So I understand your frustration, and a bit surprised at the overall direction this project has gone. So just a little commentary.
This is new, Ashley. What we're seeing here is different than what the feasibility and what we've been previously.
Well, maybe that's what I'm very surprised about. I mean, it just seems like it's been changed significantly in the design or intent or concept from the original that we were looking at a few years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for your presentation. And we look forward to hearing about how this progresses.
Thank you.
So we are on to item number 7, which is Mark Gold giving a MWD update.
We always love hearing
As long as you want to take, Mark.
I want that.
No.
So who's as twisted as I am in following the Colorado? Anybody here? We're at all-time record lows for both Lake Mead and Lake Powell. Lake Mead right now is at 1039, and Lake Powell is at 3519. So basically, we're screwed. And what's happened is we have, at the federal level, the federal environmental impact statement was finalized and released about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It was basically a punt because the 7 states couldn't agree on what to do. And so, litigation is by far the likely outcome. Arizona would be probably number 1 on the list, most likely to sue. And so that's an issue. The record of decision was supposed to be out by now. It still hasn't, as well as the basically an annual plan is supposed to go with that. And so that'll either be end of this week or next week. The expiration of everything from the standpoint of managing the Colorado is September 30th. So we need a new program in place for management of the Colorado by October 1st. So there's been all sorts of useless meetings with the governors that basically haven't moved anywhere either. So it's just fascinating to me as a participant and observer of responses to environmental crises my whole career that I have no idea what would ever take any action to occur on the Colorado. Because I would have thought we were already past that point. So if you don't know the numbers, at 10:35 at Lake Mead, Hoover, basically 70% of the turbines have to be turned off. And so, so much for clean hydropower. And so that would mean, 30% remaining. You would think that would be an incentive because that's revenue that would come to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation that they're not going to be getting. And the largest customers are City of LA as well as Metropolitan Water District. So have to find energy elsewhere is basically how that's looking. Because right now, like I said, we're at the pace we're going, man, end of the year, unless we have some weird rainfall that occurs, but end of the year, I'm guessing, if not before, will be below 1035 at Mead, the pace that we're going. It might even be earlier. It's really shocking how quickly everything's dropping. Every day is a brand new record on what's going on there. We had a sort of a, 3-hour meeting. I think Judy probably remembers I was pushing for those 10 years ago on, what's the game plan for us as Metropolitan Water District on, how do you move forward with sustainable management of the Colorado with 40 million people relying on that supply. 70% is ag, 30% is urban. So we went through about a dozen different potential actions that encouraging Metropolitan to try to get out, a little late to get out in front of anything 3.5 years into failed negotiations, but to at least state that these are the things that absolutely need to occur for us to have any chance of managing the Colorado sustainably in the future. Unclear what they'll do with that, but at least we had that 3-hour meeting and discussed those items, which took about 9 months to get them to do. And so that occurred. The way the feds are dealing with this, the ultimate punt is they're saying it's a 10-year plan, but they're basically going to be revisited every 2 years. And if there's a trigger on lake level that's dire, looking at they have all these 24-month studies that come out, every month on what's going to look like 2 years out. And if the projections are extremely dire, then they'll do basically a revisit of the plan annually. So it sounds like we're signing up to a perpetual state of negotiations because clearly they were so successful in the last 3.5 years. So that's basically how it's going. We're not seeing anything from the federal government. For them to be bold, and as I said last time when we talked about this, it's not like this has been a partisan issue. Both Dem and Republican have failed to manage the Colorado in a sustainable manner. So you don't have to just pick on this administration for how poorly things are going. You could look at the Biden administration, Obama, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, basically almost feels like 26 years of denial on where we're at. And so even now I see folks talk about, the average flow in the Colorado being about 12.5 million acre feet. And the allocation of water rights is about 16 to 17 million acre feet. So I don't know, a little bit of math says we're about 4 million acre feet a year upside down. The only problem is if you look at 2020 to the present, it's an average of 10.2 million acre feet. So I don't know whether that's, where we are right now on the Colorado, but to assume we're at 12 is pretty foolish. And 12.5 is pretty foolish. But that definitely is the rhetoric you'll see in everybody talking about this. And the reality is because there's so little water left in storage that the margin for error doesn't exist anymore. And so that's really the point. To give you an idea, off the top of my head, the amount of water left in Lake Mead before you actually reach full power pool is about it's about 2 million acre feet or so, something like that, which is not that much, and so, and then getting all the way to dead pool is like something like 6 million acre feet, but, we'd be in big trouble if we get anywhere near dead pool. And Powell's a very similar situation. They're about 29 feet now from power pool, but the reliance on Glen Canyon Dam for power generation is not nearly as big as Hoover. So that's the unfortunate, sad tale of what's going on in the Colorado. And again, it's just like I don't know what level of crisis actually triggers action. The one thing that I do state to people, because we have a complete reluctance to get into this urban versus agricultural debate, is that if you do the math, that basically we could stop using water in the cities and the Colorado would still be in trouble. So this whole hey, let's have the cities do more and more and more, we'll never get there. The math will never allow you to get there because of only 30% of the use. And so unless agriculture does something significant and substantial and that's permanent rather than just getting paid to not farm their land, to let you an idea how crazy things are, as I said this last time, water on the Colorado is free to everybody who has a water right. It costs between 25 and 50 cents an acre foot. And so what ends up happening is if you want that water back, the federal government, talking about a sweetheart deal, the Imperial Irrigation District gets around $880 per acre foot for free water that they get from the feds. So if they're asked to fallow their fields and not use water, they get $880 per acre foot on water that they get for free. So that shows you how perverse the situation is right now and how unwilling people are to solve the problem. And to put this in perspective, to show you again how crazy it is, we hear a lot more in Southern California about the Bay Delta issue, and water coming from the Sierra and the State Water Project, and if you're in the Central Valley Project. And what happens there is every single year, from month to month to month, you get snow surveys, you get estimates of what the hydrology is, et cetera. And then based on that, you get an allocation coming to your water agency. And so like in a severe drought year, you might only get 5 to 10% of your water right. You don't get paid for the 90% you don't get, but that's how it works on the Colorado. It's just crazy. Same federal government runs a CVP U.S. Bureau of Reclamation that also runs the Colorado. So it's a very bizarre situation where you're just going, this seems so fixable, but everybody's just so stubborn, fighting for their own states or fighting for their own water right, that they're just not willing to do it. But that obviously would be another potential solution, is that we manage the Colorado the same way most of the rest of the world and country manages their water, which is on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis, not, you get 100% of the water that you're entitled to, and if you don't get it, you get paid for not getting it. And so that's where we are. It's pretty crazy. And so, that's the big thing going on right now at Metropolitan. There's been some other things in the last few months. Two-year budget was passed that was surprisingly not that controversial, and actually included a very small increase in ad valorem property tax. Really only City of LA is the only one who sort of complained much about it. I mean, it's like 0.003% increase or something like that. So it's not like a big deal, but trying to move their financial situation so that there's some, fixed costs that are covered. A higher percentage of fixed costs are covered by their budget than previously, because we saw the vulnerability to that during areas of drought where there's a lot less purchase of water, and then revenues go way down. And so that's why the importance, I think they moved from roughly 22% or so of fixed cost up to about 40%. And so that's been sort of a move that's been going on for quite some time. But other than that, I mean, people care about the Delta Conveyance Project, whether you're for it or against it. Not much momentum for it right now with Newsom turning out. He was obviously turning out. He was the big proponent of it. So it's really unclear what it will happen with that, assuming Governor Becerra will be the governor. We don't really know, but sort of a black box on where he is on the environment and on water, because that really wasn't a big part of what he did when he was the AG or in Congress or the like. So unclear there. People think he'll probably be pretty moderate, but maybe consistent, which is something that would help, because this administration's been all over the place. On water has definitely not been a strength, for sure. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions anybody has on what's going on. Don Ortega terms out as chair, and so he's probably maybe even potentially leaving the board, because he's sort of helping out the city of San Fernando. He's not a resident there, but they have him being there. He's a Fullerton resident. And so, he might be gone completely from the board in 4 months. And so there's definitely going to be some effort on, who's the new chair going to be. And so there's all sorts of rumors flying around, because that's what Met is good at, is rumors. And so we'll see where that ends up. But it doesn't appear that anybody in the LA contingent, as example, is going for it at all. And so if I had to bet today, I'd say it's going to be a San Diegan. And San Diego has definitely become a lot more conservative since they got their settlement with Metropolitan Water District on the water litigation that had been ongoing for over a decade. So that's the bet, is that we're moving even further conservative than what we have been. So that's the latest at Met. Any questions?
Can you be the chair?
Oh, God, no. I'd get one vote. Yeah, no. Yeah, no one's voting for me. That's for sure. I'm the person who keeps telling us that climate change is real. I mean, that's how bad it is, as you know. And we had some discussion on a modification to I can't remember, the administrative code for Met to add all this climate language in there. And you had, I don't know, 7, 8 folks who are board members argue about, we're just not ready to do that yet. And I'm just like, I just don't know what again, you look at the Colorado and you're like, seriously guys, like, are you even, I go, are you guys just denying? I said it out loud too. That's how bad it is in my old age. I just go, are you guys just deniers? Like, what's going on here? You know? And it's just like, no, we're not climate change deniers. And I'm just like, then why is this even a problem? It's just a minor administrative tweak to say that climate is part of what we will consider at the One Water Committee. It's the dumbest thing ever. It shouldn't have even been an item. It was so trivial. But it ended up being 45 minutes and people fighting against it. So that's kind of who we are. So everything's all about cost right now. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that uplifting report, Mark.
Hey man, that's what I'm here for.
I was going to ask you where you meditate because you're still hanging in there.
You know, it's actually probably good that I'm at Scripps and I get to look out the ocean at La Jolla Cove a few days a week.
Blue Mine, yeah.
You know, so that actually has been quite helpful, because if I sat on, you know, and I think Judy went to a lot more committee meetings than I did. I'm focusing on the stuff where I know the stuff super well, you know, so Imported Water Committee is what I chair. Anything to do with climate, you know, anything to do with the environment, you know, I'm there. But all the other committees, honestly, I'm largely blowing off other than the board, because it would just drive me absolutely bonkers.
And you still have time to give presentations with your son yesterday at UCLA, Mark. Impressive.
That's October. If everyone wants to come and see the comedy stylings of Golden Gold, you know, come on out.
I do have a question. I'm worried about how this is all going to play out, how you think this is all going to play out in the next couple decades, 2-3 decades out. Obviously, climate change is real. We know this, and
we're not going to make it 2-3 decades. What I'm telling you is Colorado's the next 3 years is the most, and I honestly think we could see cavitation in the turbine system and pumping system in either Glen Canyon or Hoover Dam within the next 2 years. I mean,
so
yeah.
we lose the power. We're going to obviously lose the water source. Imperial Valley is not going to get its water, right?
Then maybe they might come off their positions.
We have food. I mean, what's seeming that the solutions haven't come, and politics are
sooner or later
nuts.
They have to come. It just shows you that being on the verge of a crisis isn't enough to make people do what's in the best interest of the greater good. You actually need the disaster to occur, which is pathetic in 2026.
Yeah.
But that's, you know me, I've been a student of this forever, and I always wondered where that threshold was. It is so much worse than what I thought. I had no idea. From the standpoint, I thought people would act when we were, you know, Lake Mead was at like 1050 or 1060 or 1070. I never ever thought we'd be sitting here at 1039 going like, yeah, maybe we should do something, you know? And I'm like, yeah.
So do you project a radical change in how we produce food and having to address the agricultural model that we have, which is unfortunately still a highly industrialized model?
Ag's still the third rail. What I can tell you about Metropolitan is that the reason why I think we can be bold in using the bully pulpit is we're sitting here with 3 years stored water. So we had the foresight as an agency to really load up on stored water during those years, and we've been really, really good at water conservation. And so the combination of those two things has put us in a space where we can, you know, have a great deal more flexibility. But boy, you live in Arizona, you are screwed. You know, I mean, they don't have the same sort of resources that we do from the standpoint of stored water. They have groundwater overdraft as we do in the Central Valley, but not as much here in Southern California. You know, so they're in a much, much worse situation. Same thing. Vegas is actually in a good situation because of storage, and they have the resources, and they also have, you know, the best recycling and conservation program in the country by a mile, which nobody ever thinks of in Vegas, but it's true. It's crazy true. like what those guys do.
Right. So it sounds like lots of people have questions. Hopefully they're very important and quick questions, because we've got less than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Kick us out.
Yeah.
let's go with this.
Small
and
and
then-
large. I mean, we are going to have a weird rain year. How much difference is that going to make? How much does that buy us? And then
Can you tell me how El Nino is going to come out? Because
Absolutely.
nobody I work with at Scripps seems to know.
yeah. To what extent is some of the things you described, or are there solutions written down, in the negotiating process that if people wanted to do them, we could get something? Well, I mean, no, actually sort of the language, like we would do this, and it's just that, people don't want to look at it, and to what extent when they actually really decide we're totally screwed and need to do something, will they need to invent it from scratch?
To me, that's what this meeting, Rob, was last Friday, this 3-hour meeting that I finally forced to occur. It took, like I told you, over 6 months, 9 months to make it happen. We have about a dozen different actions. And
That's mad. I mean, on the ag side.
Oh, on the ag side, ag basically has not played with anybody. With anybody. And so
They have nothing written down.
for them, it's all about pay us to not farm. So it's the same old, same old. Now, whether they'll continue getting their 880 and, I don't know if you know Met. So one of the things that happened was, so Met had, with the surplus, they have a bunch of stored water in Lake Mead. Can you imagine? Think about if there was a run on the bank, so to speak, you'd have no water left in Lake Mead because everyone's stored water credits or would take you down to Deadpool. So anyway, so we sold about 200,000 acre feet for $65 million for that purpose. We have 1.6 million acre feet of stored credit in Lake Mead. I've been encouraging everybody for at least the last 6 months to sell a million of the 1.6, to try to do that. And honestly, ag could do this, IID could do the same sort of thing. They don't have quite as much, but a fair amount. But getting rid of that ICS from the standpoint of selling it to the feds, even if it's a reduced price, so we got $350 an acre foot, not $880, which is like, it's better than it being a stranded asset where we don't get a penny. But from the standpoint of ag doing anything seriously that they don't get paid for, not even in the vocabulary. That's just where it is. And just like the upper basin, they're still not willing to do anything firm. Everything's voluntary after 3.5 years of failed negotiation. Their argument is we only use 4.5 million acre feet a year, even though we get 7.5 million acre feet a year of rights. But the reality is they don't have any storage. So they never use their 7.5 million. And so then the remainder of that goes down to the lower basin. And so, and God knows we use our allocation each and every year. So that's where it is. Until urbans are willing to take on ag in a serious way, this isn't going anywhere. It's just not.
And last word, Jerry?
Since you're here, Mark,
Yeah.
and everyone knows of your environmental expertise and love for Santa Monica, I would like to just ask, without putting you on the spot,
I'm used to it.
briefly, what do you think are maybe the 2, 3, or 4 most important environmental issues our city council and our city staff will be doing now as we think globally and globally?
I guess I can't get in trouble anymore. And even though that never stopped me before, but I'd love for this place to go back to trying to be the best sustainable city in the country, and we have not. We've completely ran away from that, and it's embarrassing, And I've, like you, Jerry, I've lived here most of my life, and I'm in shock at what how low of a priority true sustainability is for our city with the leadership that we have right now, and that just That just can't be the case. We're freaking Santa Monica, for crying out loud, you know? And there's certain things we still do super well because people are still here. I love the fact we're getting off of Metropolitan Water District water. It's going slower than we'd like, but at least you can look at things like the SWIP, and you could look at Measure V and Measure W and go like, yeah, we're kicking ass compared to a lot of other folks in those areas. But boy, you look at sustainability as a whole in this city, and it's like, man, I can't even believe it. We're building in places that are toxic sites without cleaning them up. Santa Monica? Seriously? I just never thought I'd see the day. Then full-on sustainability when we're the first sustainable city program in the entire country? No, that's good enough for me. That's the biggest thing I think we should be doing as a city that we're not right now. And hey, if you guys all go to city council one day and talk about it, I'd be more than happy to say I was there at the beginning with Dean. And, you know, we don't even recognize this place anymore. These are the things that need to occur that will make Santa Monica back to what it was on sustainability. This is a fundamental core value of who we are in the city, and it's just been dropped.
Right. Perfect segue, Mark. Thank you. And thank you for your report.
Sure.
Because we're talking about future agenda planning, and we have a list. This is for the Commission on Sustainability future agenda for next month, September. We're doing a joint meeting with our EV subcommittee, potentially talking about building performance standards and our building reach codes. And we'll finally get to talk about our airport expansion update, and hopefully our discussion about contamination at the airport finally, which got pulled way back when. And Department of Transportation hybrid vehicle van pool initiative, and then in October, disposable foodware ordinance. So one thing I'd like to add would be a discussion with representatives from the city manager's office about the direction of our sustainability program. Some of us had a call with the city manager and some other folks. Mark was on that. I was on that I was in the UK at the time. You were on that as well. So we talked about getting regular updates to this commission from the city manager's office. So I'd love to add that. It would sound like September would be the good time to do it. And I can talk to you offline about that. I did meet with the assistant city manager, Susan Klein, had a good talk with her about it, and she wants to have ongoing meetings as well. So let's get that ball rolling.
I'm going to meet with Oliver at the end of the month. So if there's something that I should be saying to him, please tell me.
Updates.
Okay. Yeah.
We all asked on that.
Yeah.
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 I'd
Okay.
like to add one more thing. Is my concern is I feel, and this is just from the outside looking in, that the council or policy decisions or development decisions aren't factoring in different environmental factors into when they're making certain decisions. We kind of get presentations and then we're presented with these things and then we're supposed to vote or recommend it to council or not. But how much are environmental considerations being factored in to all these major city decisions, and who are the environmental consultants weighing in? Because it's certainly not anybody here. And so that's just something I'd like to have a little bit more clarity on as well.
Right. Well, and I think that's a discussion we can have directly with the city manager's office when they come here. So, perfect. And I'll send you Chris's email that she sent out. Any other ideas or topics to put on our future agendas? Hearing none?
I would strongly recommend that. I see that you have the disposable foodware ordinance. I don't exactly know what that entails, but the enforcement.
Either do I.
Yeah. The enforcement of plastics in restaurants has gone to the wayside. We're seeing disposables being plastic foodware packaging giving out from Panda Express
Perfect.
Yeah,
So Clove, let's loop that into that discussion.
Enforcement,
Talk
yeah.
about enforcement of existing ordinance, and I'm not sure, is this may be an update?
Yeah, I mean,
To-
real quickly, I could just mention that we are looking at completely revising the existing policy to change it, because right now the language isn't very consistent. We talk about marine degradable plastics.
Yes.
They really don't exist.
Right.
So that's what this is all about. We'll provide an update on how we're trying to revise the policy.
We should talk. Craig Caldwalder, have you talked to him from Surfrider? He has ready to go packaged language for us.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Clean Beaches announcements.
Our next meeting is at 7 PM on Monday, November 16th, right here in this room. Do any other committee members have any announcements? Would benefit the rest of the group?
I would just like to ask that city staff come back or possibly watch the first watch the behavior of the storm drain, because it's an interesting, very interesting phenomenon, and I think seeing it firsthand, I know there's engineering and math and computations that go into the 95th percentile storm. I get it, but the nature of that storm drain. It behaves differently than you'd expect. And what I'm talking about is it's not just the water flow, it's not just a hydrology thing, it's also the fact that it has sand in the mouth, right, that is not removed before the water comes. And so it's going to take more engineering and thought into getting a design that will work. So let's talk offline.
Great. Thank you. Any other last words before we adjourn? No, okay. We are adjourned at 10 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.